I'm Darren Morton,
I'm Simon Matthews. This is Lift.
the Lifestyle Medicine podcast where we dive into the science of health and wellbeing. Hello, brother Simon. How are you doing?
Hello. Very well, thank you. Thank you for asking. Hope you are doing equally well.
I am doing equally as well. I am. Now, I'm interested in you sharing with me the last time that you were awestruck. Yeah, when was the last time you had that moment of like transcendence, like that awe, that vastness, to see vastness?
Vastness. So this is an interesting question. So for me, the experience of awe is kind of the same sort of thing that makes me say, "Wow."
Yeah.
That's what awe would be for me. Now, I don't know whether I'm misunderstanding awe here, but yeah, I can. I mean, the last time that I experienced, I mean, I can think of two instances on the weekend just gone.
Weekend? Wow, you live in action.
Just in the last. Well, but here's the thing: it wasn't. It was nothing amazing. It wasn't action packed. It was just two moments that kind of just struck me and just made me go, oh wow, yeah.
And what do you mind sharing what they are?
Yeah, of course. So one of them. So it's been very rainy and cool where I live for an extended period of time. Grey skies and so on. And the last few days, the weather's just started to warm up a little bit. The bottom of the low temperature has just lifted a little bit. The top temperature has just lifted a little bit. So that whole kind of range has shifted up. And on Saturday, I sat outside and just for a period of time. It was the sky was clear blue. The temperature was not, by I guess objective standards, incredibly warm. It was like 15 degrees or something like that. But the sun, I had my back to the sun, and the sun was just kind of radiating down on me, and I don't know. I find it difficult to even put into words. But I just had this experience of sitting there, kind of being bathed in this way, and feeling like, this is this is. I don't know what the words are. I don't have the words for it. It wasn't a wordy kind of experience. It was just a sense of this moment being sort of bathed in the warmth of the sun. And the next moment was the very next day. I went walking in the park, and I used this app actually that a lifestyle medicine colleague in the US put me onto, and it's an app for identifying birds. So you start it going, and it samples the sounds, and then it will tell you based on your location, this is the bird that I'm hearing. And so I went to this park. Bear in mind the weather's just started warming up and so on. And I just started. I heard a couple of birds which I knew straight away, which is what prompted me to switch it on. So I switched it on, kept walking through the park, and after about 10 minutes, I just happened to look down at it again, and there was this whole long list of all of these birds that were there that had been picked up, including some that are relatively rare to hear that I hadn't been aware of hearing in that time, but they'd all been identified there. And I had just had this moment of kind of thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm just surrounded by this kind of vibrant bird life. And it actually made me then be much more mindful. so 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 then I started looking into the trees. I really started listening much more closely to see
Mm,
if I could, in fact, discern those individual bird calls. So
mm,
it kind of it was a moment of kind of wow that then turned into um, an activity of really focused attention.
mm. And how did you feel coming out of those experiences?
Um, yeah, that's a great question, and relaxed is not the right word.
Mm.
Um, and if I use
Yeah, that's hard to
if I
articulate.
if I use
Mm,
the word, it is, and if I use the word that feels like it describes the experience, it just sounds weird. Um, and the idea is, I just felt kind of peaceful and connected.
yeah,
Um,
that's interesting.
co-
Yeah,
Connected with what? I don't know. I don't know what
yeah,
I was connected with, but
yeah,
just
yeah.
I felt like I kind of sort of belonged
Mm,
somehow, which sounds like a weird way to describe what
mm.
happens when you just sit in the sun for 10 minutes, or you hear a few birds.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and it is interesting. And sorry for putting you on the spot because I've been interested in your struggle to articulate it in some regards because it's a hard thing to do. And why I ask you this question, and thanks for sharing those stories, is that I've actually just returned from a really cool experience. I went on a charity bike ride, and it actually it was on mountain bikes. It was over 5 days, a long ride. I think it was about 450
Wow,
kilometres over the 5 days, and we rode as a group,
wow, 90 k's a
about,
day.
about 25 of us, but we rode from the capital of Australia, so Canberra, up to the highest peak in Australia, which is
Hmm.
Mount Kosciuszko. And not surprising, I actually had several of these moments of being awestruck, and another name for this would
Yeah.
be have these transcendent type experiences, and I'll share it just really briefly because they
Mm,
came
mm.
somewhere anticipated, I think, in some regard, but somewhere a little bit unexpected as well. And here are three key ones. And so the first one was clearly just the scenery. Like there were times, and there was one particular moment
Mm.
where you're on the bike, you're climbing, and for over an hour you're just going up and up and up, and then eventually you come around this peak, and then you turn, and it's this sort of dirt. It was all on off road, mostly off road. So you turn around, and then you emerge at this lookout, and this lookout looks over what's called Lake Yucambine, and it's this huge watercourse, but you are
Mm.
high, and it's 360-degree view from here, and you're looking around, and unremarkably, it's just like you don't know what to say. Like it's just, and in fact, I think it was.
Yeah.
I understand that when the Queen Elizabeth, when she was with us many years ago, and she visited Australia, they took her to this spot so that she could see, the vastness of it. And it's interesting. Awe is often described as perceived vastness. Right? So, and it's just vast. It's big,
Perceived fast.
and there you
Yeah.
are. You're there. You're sitting up there, and I just, and it wasn't. I wouldn't say peaceful because I was exhausted. So it wasn't calm even. It was just there's
Mm.
something there, something special about that kind of moment. So that was one
Mm.
time.
Mm.
And then there were several other times throughout the course of the week where I just had moments of going, boom, just it's big. This is big country and it's
Yeah.
beautiful country.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there was definitely those sort of connections with nature. Then I had this other really interesting thing. It was day 4. We just finished day 4, and by day 4, I was exhausted. And because I hadn't done a lot of riding leading up to it, and I was with some people that had, and so I was getting pushed pretty hard. And that night, I lay in bed, and I was completely exhausted, and I was resting, and I had this urge when I was young. My mum she loves music. Mum used to have in our house. We used to have a big jukebox, right? So mum loves the latest stuff. Like I just loved all the latest music that was coming out. Mum would always be playing it with this jukebox. I just always remember it be playing in the house. Anyway, but she had this Elvis album, all right? And it was actually these Elvis gospel classics, I think it was, old school. Like, I don't know when this was recorded, back in the 60s or whatever.
Wow.
And for some reason, I had the urge to listen to this, and I lay in bed and I had my noise cancelling headphones in, and I'm listening to these, and there was something about that was just, I don't know, it was just beautiful. It was like, it actually was quite transcendent for me. It really did lift me. And it was very unexpected because I didn't think it would come from Elvis, but it did. So well done, Elvis. But then the last time that it happened, and once again, unexpected, we were all travelling home in the bus. So after this, day 5, everyone's exhausted. We had a bit of a celebration that evening. The next day, we all travelled home in the bus. And it was about a 7-hour drive. And, you know, in the midst of answering emails and catching up on all those things I should have been doing whilst I was instead riding a bike, we got into a really great discussion with a couple of the other people, and we were chatting, and we were talking about these things that were just good, you know, like and having impact and how we should live our lives, and you know what, just connecting with these other people and talking about these high ideals. It was just completely uplifting. And once again, I just came away just going, I took it's like you breathe out and then take a fuller breath in. And anyway, I was thinking about this whole idea of awe, you know, and transcendence. And what we know, and the research is pretty clear on this, is that there's a whole lot of benefits to having these kind of experiences. And some of the benefits are quite intriguing. So, for example, we actually know that when people experience more moments of awe and transcendence, which is, you know, when you basically get lifted to something bigger than yourself, you see the big picture, but it actually promotes pro-social behaviour, which is intriguing to me. As a psychologist, you got any insights as to why that might be the case? Why would having these moments like that?
Possibly. Just before I say that, though, I want to observe too that you know, you talked about awe as being perceived, you know, moments of perceived greatness, and it struck me during your vastness. Yeah, it struck me while you were talking that the vastness doesn't need to be a physical vastness; it can be a metaphorical vastness.
Yes.
So you know, listening to that music connects you to the vastness of your family connections.
I hadn't thought of that. That's true.
You know, and so there's something. I think there's something beyond certainly those physical experiences of vast physical space do this. And I know, by the way, that I can trigger this experience for myself very easily simply by going out at night to a dark place, looking into the night sky, and just appreciating what I'm actually looking at. You know, when I, you know, if you look at the Milky Way galaxy, or you look at stars, particular stars like Alpha Centauri, just reflecting on the distance away that they are, and therefore the age of the universe is one of those things that just, you know, drives my mind wild, and I feel completely overwhelmed and just so insignificant in those moments because of the vastness of that.
And that is an interesting observation that you make there, because we see the same, like Neil Armstrong coming back from the moon. He actually said that, I looked out the window and I saw that tiny blue pea. And he said, in his words, he said, I held out my thumb, and closed one eye, and I blotted out the entire planet. And he says, and I didn't feel like a giant. I felt very, very small. You know, and it's true. But here's this really interesting thing. These awe-inspiring moments, often these vast moments, these transcendent moments, we often do feel very, very small, but I don't know, is insignificant the word? Like, because it's almost like it's not self-depreciating, well, it sort of is, but it's in some ways you feel that, like I think you said connected. You feel, I don't know, you feel like, I don't know how to articulate this.
Lift is supported by the Lift Project, an educational adventure where you learn science-based ways to lift your mood and your life. The Lift Project is lifting lives around the globe, in healthcare settings, workplaces, schools, universities and communities. To find out more, visit theliftproject.global.
It's not. It's not intentionally self-deprecating. I think it's not that we, intend to, I don't even know what the word is. We tend to diminish ourselves, but that's just the effect of it. And in answer to your earlier question about pro-social behaviour, I suspect this is all part of the mechanism that in there's almost a sense in which metaphorically shrinking ourselves means that those other connections kind of become clearer and more present in that moment. It's a what's the metaphor I'm looking for here? It's a little like two or three or four or some number of things can all be present at the one time, and sometimes one thing dominates and grabs our entire attention. But if we consciously allow that one thing to diminish in size, the other things start to become more apparent to us, and I think easier to kind of get a hold of, as it were, or get a grip on. So there's something there about diminishing self and simultaneously building or growing or aggrandizing connection that I think goes on during this experience.
Maybe a better way to word it is it softens the ego, and reduces that self-focus. I think what it does is shift our perspective.
Yeah.
Like, wow, we're part of something big. We're part of something vast, and all this, and to bridge off that metaphor you were using. When we're not taking up, when we personally are not taking up most of our attentional capacity, maybe there's more room for others to come in there. Maybe then, and so therefore we feel that greater sense of connection. So it's an interesting paradox in some regards that by feeling smaller, we actually feel more connected in some ways. So the research is pretty clear that it actually does promote pro-social behaviour. And I think you couldn't go to the moon and look back at the Earth and not realise that, hey, we're all in this together. It's not them and us. It's just us. We're all here standing on the same planet. So one of the other things that the research shows is that definitely it's very effective, these moments for shifting our focus. And I can't count the number of times this has occurred for me, just from the point of view of life is just messy sometimes, and it's hard, and you've got all of these pressures and all these stresses, and you're in the trees, and and it's like, but then all of a sudden these little moments that pull you up, and then you see the forest, and it's like, oh, that email, I think it's not so bad. I can respond to that. Like, I think shifting your perspective and even realizing what really matters. I think this is another huge value to that. As Stephen Covey talks about, putting first things first. I think that all moments, these transcendent moments, really help with that, because they help us to see that big picture, and what is truly important, and what is might be urgent but not that important. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And then, of course,
it's like a reboot or a reset. That we need, and I'm just thinking actually of thinking of computers, and that's the context in which we talk about rebooting frequently, of course. And I suspect we've all had that experience of, using one of these infernal devices that, where things stop functioning in the way that they should. A key's not working, or a command's not working, or something won't open, or something won't close or shift or move, or whatever it is. And no matter what you try and do, you can't change that. The only solution is to reboot. And when you reboot, everything resets in the way that it's intended to and functions in that way. And as you're sharing this, I'm wondering, whether in many ways that's actually the important function of experiences of awe. It's a means of us resetting and returning all those operations to their most functional state, the way that they're designed to be, so that we're connected to others, we're engaged with others, we're mindful to ourselves, mindful to our immediate environment, and so on.
I agree. I think that's a really good way to think about it. I think that does definitely, from my experience, does serve that important function. And then obviously the last part is the research that, promotes pro-social behaviour, helps give us perspective and sort of reorientates us. And then, there's a lot of research clearly showing these experiences can be deeply meaningful for people too. So, give them that sense of meaning and purpose in life. So, I mean, the big question then is, how do we promote it? And how can and how can we be intentional about actually experiencing these? So, what are the pathways for these awe-inspiring, these transcendent moments? And clearly, nature is keeps coming up in the literature. So, I can think nature's definitely my happy place. And I find, I lost count of how many times I've just had really profoundly awe-inspiring experiences. For me, where like that one being up the top of a mountain, being in the ocean for me. Just a few weeks ago, I was down at one of my favourite places in Victoria, southern part of Australia, in at Wilson's Promontory, surfing there. Just everything about that was just awe-inspiring. Staring at the stars. We actually had a couple of moments where, because we're so far out away from any civilization, it's just incredible. When you look up at that, how do you soak that in? You can't. And there's something beautiful about that, that you can't master it. It's so big. So nature definitely features in transcendent moments.
Yeah. And I'm as you say this, I'm wondering now about whether there are universal triggers or universal pathways to awe, and also idiosyncratic or deeply personal ones. So it is hard to imagine. It is hard to imagine anyone walking outside on a dark night, looking into the night sky for a few minutes and kind of going, stars. Anyhow, what's on TV tonight? At least I find that difficult to imagine. I find it difficult to imagine that given the opportunity, that people don't have that experience of awe. The same if you go to that plateau that you were talking about, where you can overlook Lake Yukonbean. If we provided that opportunity, it's difficult to imagine that someone might stand there and look down and go, look at that, a lake. Anyhow, what are we having for lunch?
Well,
it seems that those things would provoke awe. Yet at the same time, if I clapped some noise-cancelling headphones on some random person and said, "Hey, listen to Elvis singing gospel songs," that's not likely.
No, it's true.
That's not likely to do that. But it's very powerful for you because of some really significant prior experiences that are meaningful for you in your life.
I think that's a great observation. One thing before we move on from that, You know what I did notice, and that is that I was at the top, and it was a very hot day, sunny, very hot conditions. I'm wearing sunglasses. I found myself when I was up there, I wanted to take the sunglasses off. It felt like they were a barrier between me fully immersing in it. It was really interesting, and
the whole experience.
But I wanted to. It's like we sometimes we put artificial things in between us and the vastness. And so anyway, that was an interesting observation. But you know what, you're right. I would struggle to understand how people couldn't be awe-inspired by seeing the beauty of nature. But another very powerful pathway people find for experiencing awe and transcendent moments are the arts. Now, music does it for me. But to be honest, other artistic like I could go to a gallery and look, this says something about me as an ignoramus of all things art. But people, they get immersed in this whole looking at this painting or whatever it might be, and I'm I have to concede that maybe there are some people. To your point about these idiosyncrasies, personal idiosyncrasies, maybe there are some people, nature doesn't do it for them. And maybe there's a really important learning in this. Maybe, if there is so much value in these transcendent and awe-inspiring moments, find your thing, find your pathway. And maybe it is
exactly right. Find what does it for you. Yeah.
Are you an artist?
And look, I have a similar. Well, so it depends how you define art. So, I have a fairly uneducated perspective of art. And when I think of art, I think of, painting and drawing. And my artistic capacity is as close to zero as you can imagine. So, if you ask me to... if you ask me to draw, two people standing under a tree, you would literally get two stick figures, and a stick figure tree as well. I just have no artistic capacity. I can appreciate art in many different forms, including painting, drawing, sculpture, and various other things. I recently went to an exhibition that included a lot of works by Andy Warhol, and I've got to say, I was generally a little underawed. I was a little underwhelmed. But I've been to other things. I've been to, for example, I've seen the Guernica hollow hanging in the Reina Sofia Museum, which just takes up this entire kind of wall, and it's breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking, and similarly, I've had that same experience that many people have had, and been underawed. I've seen the Mona Lisa in the Louvre in Paris. Stood in front of it, taken a selfie, just like everyone does. I was slightly underwhelmed, because it's actually about this big.
Is it really?
It's really tiny. It's really tiny. I mean, maybe not this big, but it's not that much bigger than that. It's not like this gigantic portrait that sort of occupies a whole wall of a gallery. It's very, very small. So I have a mixed experience there, but something that does do it for me, and I had this very experience about 2 weeks ago. I was walking along a street one Sunday morning, and I could hear the sound of a church organ playing. And as I kept walking, I got closer and closer to the sound. Saw the church that it was coming from. Went inside, and of course you can imagine, if you do this thought experiment, you open the door and go inside, and suddenly the volume and the fullness of the sound just increases dramatically. And I just sat there, in this back kind of row of this church, listening to this organ music for, maybe I don't know. I don't know how long I was there, but I just sat there feeling just quite flooded, but in a good way, like positively flooded by this experience. And again, it's something that I struggle to find words to describe.
It was interesting. I saw
but it was certainly aligned with that experience.
I saw an interview with Richard Dawkins the other day, who's probably one of the most prominent atheists in the world, and he was caught at Evensong, which is one of the church music event. And they said, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "I don't know, I just like it." And so there's definitely something about music, that the arts in various different forms that can be very transcending for many people. So nature, the arts. Yeah, some of the other there's two sort of other categories they consider of pathways to these transcendent
food
inspiring moments.
I can experience food. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I haven't done that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can think of some experiences of food meals I've eaten or eating experiences that I've had that have similarly left me with that experience of just being flooded, like from a sensory perspective, being almost overwhelmed, and connecting with this sense of magnificence. And I'm not necessarily even talking about, I'm not talking about one of those kind of, $500, 27 course degustation meals where everything is just so. But sometimes just an experience, which is probably more than the food. It's the food, it's the immediate environment, maybe the temperature, the company, the music, the vibe of the place, all of those things together,
coming together, that sensory experience,
kind of lead to. Actually, now that I say that, I had one on Sunday night. I went to a local jazz club to hear a group called Astra Jones and the Blue Flaps, and the presence that she created, or that they all created, but she especially as the singer, the presence that she created with her voice and the music was an experience where the best way I can describe this is that I just lost myself for an hour and a half, and then at the end of it all, I kind of re-emerged into this room that I was sitting in.
That's a special skill.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose that the challenge is, we know that these are really good for us, these kind of experiences, and they're very, they're meaningful and they're profoundly good for our well-being, and they make us probably better people when we experience them as well. And so, some of the other, so there's the arts, there's socialization, there's music, there's nature. I'm interested. There's a lot of work done on what they refer to as moral beauty, and this is, it's interesting where we can, and I'm this is a very powerful pathway for me. I love reading stories. I enjoy watching movies that are my favorite stories are the ones that involve courage. And it's interesting that courage is often a virtue that's sort of recognized as good by all cultures. Like, this is, the whole idea of someone standing up and doing something, even self-sacrificial. Like, there's something more inspiring about that. So there's that moral beauty. And then, of course, and sometimes relating to this, but not always, is various spiritual practices that people engage with, worship experiences or whatever that might be. But I think that this is, this whole idea of awe moments and moments of transcendence. I don't think we we chase them enough. And I think that if we were to do that, our life would be a whole lot richer for it. And certainly I think it would give us that new vantage point, for seeing the bigger picture. I think that in from that vantage point, from that viewing platform, a lot of these daily stresses and stuff just tend to, subside and fall by the wayside. So, what's your pathway?
Yeah. And I wonder whether there's also, well, in fact, I probably don't wonder. I probably have a sense that there's a practice effect here. So the more that you do this, the more susceptible you become to those experiences. The more easily you're able to enter into them. The more easily you're able to kind of connect with that sense of minuteness of self in a vast world, and at the same time experience that sense of connectedness and belonging.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, to speak to your story that you started with, that there's needs to be it can breed an intentionality towards experiencing more of it. That you shared your story about the birds, and all of a sudden wow, look how many birds are here, and then you start tuning into that. So I think there's tremendous value from a wellbeing perspective in really savouring awe, and chasing those transcendent experiences. I think that it does us well, and it does those people that we're around well as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna hunt some down today, I think.
Do it.
Lift is presented by Simon Matthews and Darren Morton. It's sponsored by the Lift Project and supported by Avondale University. Music provided by Pixabay. If you have a question or a topic you would like to hear more about, send us an email to podcast@theliftproject.global. The Lift Project. Lift your mood, lift your life.